What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus with MetalTrenches.com. As always, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel because there are plenty more videos coming right after this one. And I'm going to do kind of a 2-for-1 video today because I was starting to put together another edition of bands that changed my life. And I wanted to focus on Swedish melodic death metal band Dark Tranquility, huge forerunners in the entire genre, especially that Gothenburg sound. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I was starting to think about individual albums and what I wanted to say about them. And I'm like, you know, this would also be kind of fun to rank them as well. So it's going to be a tier list ranking video and also a little bit of bands that changed my life as I go throughout. But again, we're talking about Dark Tranquility, and let's just kind of jump into it here. And I have to start with, for me, my first Dark Tranquility album, Damage Done. Definitely S tier, amazing album from start to finish. Every song is incredible. So many memorable riffs on this one. And I'm probably a little bit biased because this, again, we tend to remember our first albums, but I have so many fond memories from this. I think it was one of the first melodic death metal albums that I actually owned. Initially, my friend burned a CD of this for me and was trying to get me into heavier stuff around the same time as I was getting into like Opeth and Meshuggah and had been kind of moving on from just metalcore and new metal. And so this was a pretty big deal for me. And I especially remember it because during this summer, I was probably 16 or around this time, and to get me out of the house more, my parents would always give us a pool pass for the pool that was within like biking or sometimes even walking distance. And while everybody else was, enjoying their time at the pool, in groups with their friends and swimming and splashing each other and all that, I was laying out by the side of the pool with my Discman jamming out Damage Done. I remember this very vividly. And so I will never forget that. That was a big part of especially that particular summer. So yeah, just such a good album and kind of underrated in a way. Like I hear a lot of people talk about this album when I bring it up, but like, to be honest, even when I Googled like Dark Tranquility album covers so that I could get all these little templates in here, this album did not come up. And that's frequently the case. Like this is kind of like an album that the internet sort of forgets for some reason. But again, whenever I have those face-to-face conversations, people definitely remember it. People love the songs. When they played live and I saw them, they played quite a few from this, which was quite pleasing to me. But yeah, definitely S tier material. And then of course, after I discovered this album, I backtracked to their previous albums, and I particularly fell in love with Haven, which I think I want to put it at A tier, which may be a controversial choice because I know, especially like the diehard old school fans of Dark Tranquility, it seems like whenever I see conversations about this on like social media or Reddit or whatever, this was like kind of Dark Tranquility fans feel the same way about this as like old school In Flames Jester Race fans feel about them starting to become more kind of quote unquote commercial, more melodic. But I like that side of them. And so I was a big fan of Haven. I think that's a really solid album. Not my top 3, which I'm going to get to. But yeah, I think Haven deserves an A. Mine's I is really kind of hit or miss. I'm going to go ahead and actually put that at probably D rank. There's a few songs on here I really like, but for the most part, it's pretty inconsistent. And there's a lot of duds, a lot of filler. If I'm thinking about being in the mood to listen to Dark Tranquility, this is definitely one of the last albums that I'm going to go to. And same with Projector. And Projector, I'm actually going to put, I think, at C. Initially, I definitely scoffed at this album, hated it, didn't like anything about it. But over time, I've kind of developed this like kind of love for it, and it's this interesting little album in their discography that sounds a little different. There's a lot of weird experimentation on it. There's like this kind of like 80s dance ballad type deal song that I actually really enjoy. And honestly, Therein has become one of my all-time favorite songs from the band. And again, when I saw them maybe 2 or 3 years ago live, they played it and everyone was singing along, myself included. It was definitely a highlight of the night. And so still not one of their best albums, but deserves some extra credit there. We Are the Void. No, let's not go to that yet. Let's keep with the older releases. I definitely need to put the Gallery. I got to put that Gallery at A. Seems fair. I mean, obviously, this is sort of the album that started it all. It's not truly their first album, but it's the first album with the proper vocalist that we've all come to know and love over the years. And again, this was one of the few times where I met a musician in person and literally felt like a little kid and starstruck. And I just became this 16-year-old all over again. Oh my God, I've been listening to your album, Damage Done, changed my life, blah, blah, blah. And I'm so embarrassed looking back at it now, but I took a picture with them and that was really cool. And I appreciate that they took the time to take a picture with this moron after their show, after I'm sure they'd rather just get out of there and get some rest before their next one. But yeah, I mean, it's a classic. It's, again, not one of my favorites. In fact, quality-wise, I almost want to put it at a B, but because of its legacy, I feel like it definitely deserves to be up in these higher tiers. Now, Skydancer, I'm going to go ahead and, for me personally, I'm going to put it D. This is back when they actually, maybe you don't know this, but Anders from In Flames was the vocalist on that album. And he was fine, but it doesn't really feel like truly Dark Tranquility yet at that point. It's the only album actually in their discography that I don't own because I just don't even really necessarily consider it a proper Dark Tranquility album. And maybe that's a cop-out, but it's just okay. You know, they're getting started. All right, so moving forwards now from Damage Done, I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm debating S or A tier for character. That's tough. I'm going to put it S tier for now. I feel like it's the perfect kind of part 2 for Damage Done. It's a very similar album, has a very similar feel and aesthetic to it. It's just kind of a continuation of everything I loved about that one, which was exciting because I think I was in early college days when this one came out and I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to hold the bar so high after I was so in love with Damage Done, and they definitely nailed it. I especially remember the first time I heard Out of the Nothing, that bass on the intro is so amazing and it gave me goosebumps. And yeah, really solid album. Might be more fair to put it at A just because it's not doing anything necessarily new, but I'm going to kind of keep it up there. And then Fiction is another interesting album that I end up to this day putting in my top 3 albums. This was an album that if you had asked me to rank it when it first came out, it would have gone in the D pile. I hated this album, and I attribute a lot of that to the fact that I fell in love with these guys when they were right in the process of only putting out harsh vocals, which longtime fans know is not really their legacy. Like, they were doing cleans from the very beginning and getting very dramatic, and I just happened to sort of jump in when they were moving away from that and were using only the harsh death metal vocals. And so that was just what I knew of them and what I really liked about them. So for them to take a turn back to really their roots on this one with those more dramatic clean vocals was very jarring to me, and I did not like it. I was definitely still kind of in a phase of like only harsh vocals, only death metal, no singing, not okay. And I found it cheesy and corny and stupid. And so I really threw this one to the side for several years, really. And then finally, I came back to it and absolutely adore it now. Definitely deserves to be at the top. One of their greatest albums, and one of the finest just melodic death metal albums out there. And then, unfortunately, we follow that up with "We Are the Void," which is fine. Like, I know some people absolutely hate this album and really trash on it, but it's sort of just middle of the road. It's fine. Like, the songs are good. It just feels very average. I feel like the production isn't as strong, but maybe it was just the copy I was listening to a lot at the time. And yeah, it's harder for me to like name you a song off of this album, but I go back and listen to it and I enjoy it. It's just, again, not the album that like jumps into my head when I think about listening to them. I think I'm going to put it at a B. And again, I think a lot of fans would put it even lower, but that feels fair for my personal preferences. Construct was another album that I hated at first. Probably not as much as I hated Fiction initially, but I just felt like it didn't feel like a Dark Tranquility album, and that was a big talking point when the reviews came out. It's less riffy, if that makes sense. Like, it feels less guitar driven, which to me just completely counters what Dark Tranquility is all about. They are very much a riff-based band for me. And so to have this change where you didn't have that same guitar playing was really rough for me. I've come to appreciate it more over the years, but again, it's not an album that I'd like jump straight to. There's a couple, like the singles especially, have kind of grown on me, and it was definitely cool to see them play it live, and I feel like they kind of did beef up the guitar in the live versions, but personally I think it's about a C for me. And then last but not least, their most recent release, Atoma. I was very excited about this album. I felt like it was a return to form, especially after Construct. They brought the riffs back. They kind of brought together sort of everything new and old that I liked about the band and had developed over the years. And the clean singing parts are still super dramatic, kind of corny, but in a really fun sing-along way. And then the heavier parts are super heavy and just a lot of catchy tracks on here. Very consistent, good stuff. And so for that reason, I'm going to put it at an A. Again, this is another one I noticed like some fans, especially longtime fans, were hoping for something more or something a little bit different. But for me, it was perfect. And it's become one of my favorites from them, but not quite cracking that top 3. And so, yeah, that is my ranking for Dark Tranquility. Absolutely love these guys. They're definitely my favorite melodic death metal band, have been for a very long time now. They're a band that kind of has that legacy for me, and I hold them very near and dear to my heart, and I've collected all their albums over the years, and so that's where that, they really did kind of change my life and my trajectory, at least when considering sort of what music I was listening at the time, and I think that they were a huge cornerstone of me shifting towards the much heavier stuff that I listen to now. And I think I think they do just serve as a really great gateway band for people looking to try to do that, because there's definitely some commerciality here. There's that melodicism, there's that catchiness that can pull you in, but they do get really heavy too, and I think introduce you to a lot of just the heavier elements. And then of course from here you're going to get into much darker, challenging, intense material. But yeah, if I would ever recommend somebody, like, what's a death metal band that like I could get started with, this would be the one. And that's very much what they were for me. So hope you enjoyed that. As always, I like to continue the discussion down in the comments or on our social media accounts. We're everywhere, so just follow us at Metal Trenches. Really interested to see what other people think, how they would rank things differently, what memories they also associate with Dark Tranquility, and also just other bands in that Gothenburg sound. Please, once more, please do subscribe if you like the video. Please like it. Please share it with others so that we can grow our audience and get more of the underground bands out there. Check out the podcast, lots of interviews and band discussions there. And then, of course, also, if you're a regular viewer or listener, please do hit up our Patreon. $1 a month may seem like nothing, but it makes a huge difference to help me cover the costs of like the podcast distribution fees and all that good stuff. So anyways, thank you so much as always for listening. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.